The Strain Season 3 Episode 5, Madness. Honestly, I think this might be my favorite episode so far in this season. I always love getting to see young Satrakian, and I think this one was really cool because not only did we get like a really awesome explanation as to how to actually defeat the Master, because they actually talk about how an old Egyptian hunter did the same thing in the past, because they're supposed, if I remember right, there are, they talk about like the 7 plagues, so there are 7 ancients, and one was actually entombed in both silver and lead. So I thought it was cool. We got that explanation. It doesn't really help, considering they don't know, this tiny little crimson worm. They don't know where this thing is in all of New York City. So of course that makes it fairly difficult for them. But they at least know if they find a way to, somehow get the Master again and take it out. They can get a box and just put this little worm in it. And I would assume, well, if it's, like any other worm, it could easily bite them and they'd have to try to figure out how to pick it up. Maybe Quinlan would have to do it. Yeah, he can't be affected based on, the flashback of him during that fight when all the worms were on his hand. So he's already, a strigoi, or at least half strigoi, so he can't actually be taken over. But it could be different for the Master. Like, you never really know what random stuff they're going to pull out with the Master, so we just have to wait for that one. But they find out an explanation as to how they can actually stop the Master from taking over the city. We have the other side of the story with Eph and Dutch, and they're figuring out how to break off the communication, which honestly, I really love that, because I was freaking out during that scene where they're doing the microwaves. And it's like, okay, they get everything to work. They find like the central nervous system, and it's actually comprised of worms, and they find out that microwaves actually affect them. And if you shoot out microwave signals, it actually disrupts their communication with each other. And maybe this is just I could easily be wrong. It's just my theory, but I think what they used still worked. Like the strigoi was in the camp, and it was, or in the cage, and it was like, okay, well, the whole thing was like F could use it to, he put the stick in there. It's like, oh, okay, you use that, and you can pull a bowl towards you, and you get the blood. And it sees this little pin, and it picks up and it's trying to start, picking the lock. And so they hit it with the microwaves, and it stops it for a minute, and then it kind of regains composure. And I don't know if that was exactly the strigoi getting over the microwave signals, which it could be, because they've talked about, that's been the whole thing this season, is they're just constantly getting stronger. And they even have, early on, they talk about the disease, which was like the big thing, in the last season. And it's like, he said, like, from completely deadly to not as bad as herpes, hasn't really been a great week. And that's something else to talk about in the opening of the episode, is like, it's been another full week since the last one, and it's been mass chaos. Like, it's been all over the place. It's almost worldwide at this point. So, or I guess technically it is worldwide, it's just not in every part of the world. And so, it's getting even crazier. It spread way beyond New York. So there's other places affected, other countries affected. And, we still have the Master in, this crimson worm form. So we have, our 2 teams trying to figure out how all this stuff is going down. And I just feel like what they did during that scene with Eph and Dutch when they used the microwave emitter, I feel like it didn't exactly reconnect with the rest of the, I guess, communication link or whatever. I feel like they've clearly shown this lately, especially like in the last episode when they had like the military guys, and I talked about this. I think at some point, they're giving back a bit of control. Like, I think the microwaves may have taken out the hive mind part of things, and then I think it sort of regained its own composure. Like, okay, let me revert from mass communication to utilizing the body that I'm already inside of, because I feel like that's why it actually started doing the lockpick thing. Maybe it was because of the mass communication, but they haven't really shown that. Until this episode, honestly, they never showed that the minor, the lesser strigoi had any sort of contact with each other. It seemed like it was all directly the Master. And like I mentioned before, maybe the Master actually has gained a new body, because the Master did take over that one strigoi at the end of the last episode. So it could be the fact that the Master is still keeping everyone connected, because, and that's, how that worked when they were on the table and stuff. But I feel like based on what we saw in this episode, not only in that scene, but also the scene with Fett, when he thinks there's like some construction workers, and it turns out to be this, the strigoi, like in the hard hats and everything. I feel like they're reverting back to the actual people that they took over, at least like in a minor sense of they retain their skills at least. They're still, of course, still strigoi, and they still follow the main master plan, but they still revert back a little bit if necessary. They're able to revert back to utilizing the actual components of the human that they took over, and it's like, okay, this person has this skills, or these skills, and this is how I can use that. And I feel like that's what happened. I feel like the machine worked, and then it reverted because it was like, okay, well, it's still a part of the communication network, which, like I said, I would assume the master would have to have a new body for that to even be a thing, for them to communicate that way. But once it got hit with the emitters, like I said, it's pure theory. It could have just been exactly what we saw, that it just, in that split second, it was like, alright, microwaves, got it, figured it out, and it's able to overcome that. Or it really could be that it regressed at least a little bit back to its, utilizing the human that it, took over. So, I don't know, could easily be wrong, but that's kind of my running theory at this point based on some of the stuff we've seen. It's like, alright, they've clearly shown this Strigoi are using more of the tactics of the actual humans that they inhabit. Like, that was some random person. That person could have been a thief or anything like that, and that's how they knew how to, pick a lock with whatever that little thing was on the ground. It looked like a giant, like one of those big plastic white bobby pins. But it's like, maybe that's how that worked. And of course it could be the master as well, and all that little stuff. But just based on what we saw in this episode alone, really, that's kind of the theory that I'm going with now. And could be wrong, but that's just what I've been seeing. And it's like, I feel like that's what the big change has been, that they're getting, not only they are literally getting stronger, like obviously the virus is hardly doing anything to them now, but also I feel like they're utilizing more of the human components of the people that they actually took over. So I think that's pretty cool. It's of course insanely dangerous, but we saw it quite a bit in this episode, so I thought that was pretty cool. Something that happened in this episode that I really loved is something, like, it did something where I was like, I can't believe I never thought of this before, but Fett in this episode made me realize it makes no sense that the master wasn't keeping eyes on him. Like, I know he was keeping eyes on Eph because it's like, alright, this guy is like, the head of this department in the CDC and all that stuff, so it made sense. Like, his job, along with his two friends who are working with him, is to combat stuff like this, and it made perfect sense. Let's keep an eye on this guy and these other two, and we'll see exactly how things are going. And then of course, just the way it all worked out, it's like, alright, well, I can easily control this person because now I have his wife. So it made a lot of sense. And then this episode, I'm like, wow, Fett is always doing some crazy, I feel like he's done more experimental stuff than F has. Like, F, because it's so scientific, he's always working on like one thing at a time, and it just takes a long time because it's a crazy chemical experiment and all sorts of crazy research and all these other different things. But for Fett, it's like, alright, I'm going to put some tags on you, I'm going to do this, I'm going to make some grenades here, I'm going to make flash bombs, silver bombs, all this crazy different stuff. And for some reason this episode was when I finally realized, like, man, maybe the master should be keeping an eye on Fett, because he's the one always figuring out something really crazy. He was the one who, well, he wasn't the first one to notice it, but he was, he took the information to Justine, like, hey, their communication is down, like they're not doing coordinated attacks and stuff. So he's paying a lot of attention. He was working with the military guys. He's always doing something very different than what he was doing last time to try to stop all the strigoi. And it was just funny, like, he's going off by himself, totally survived the whole episode. I was like, he's a main character, so I don't think he'll die, but just watch, like, as soon as he crawled through that hole, I was like, man, if he wasn't a main character, this dude would be dead so fast. It was insane. But he goes through, he beats up the two guys, he survives, he lifts the one and tosses it onto, like, I don't know what you'd actually call that machine, but he tosses it on there, and it just, of course, it gets blended up, and he still survives that because it should have shot worms all over him. But it's like, boom, he brushed a couple off, he's totally fine. And, he finds, the big, nesting area in Central Park. I thought for sure when he was, like, leaving out, he'd end up getting attacked and he'd have to, like, fight his way out. But, he just gets out and it's like, he takes a big, breath of fresh air. It's like, alright, I'm in Central Park, this is where they are. Thousands of them just in this like old, it looked like a missile silo almost, just like way wider. So he's always doing something. It's just this whole episode I realized that I was like, man, I can't believe the Master never really kept eyes on him. Like I'm pretty sure there were a couple of moments for sure where he was in contact with the Master outside of actually running into the Master. But it was just crazy. It was like, man, he's always doing something different. The Master should have been keeping eyes on him way more than Eph. It takes a long time for Eph to figure out all these different chemicals and stuff. And Fett is just like, all right, I'm gonna make this thing. I'm gonna hit them in the head with a hammer and put, staple a little tracker on them, and it just works out perfectly for him. So, leading into the next episode, I'm pretty excited. They're doing this giant battle at Central Park. I think the episode is called Battle for Central Park or something like that. So I'm excited for what they're going to be doing. It should be really crazy. And of course we have the other stuff with the rest of the characters as well. But maybe this microwave thing can still work. They can at least try it. Who knows if it's going to, this one strigoi is cleared of it. But if I remember right, the machine was still on. So even if it overcame, the microwaves, in that specific moment and they killed it, maybe that signal still wouldn't get out to the rest of, the network, which like I said, I have to assume that the Master has a new body we just haven't seen yet, and that's how they're even able to still communicate, because I would have thought there would be no reason for them to, communicate in that way. It was just, the brain stimulation. Maybe it's just the sound effects in general. It's not exactly, they say it is frequency based, so it's not exactly, it doesn't have to be the Master, but, there's something there. I still think that the microwave machine could still work if they, at least for a couple of seconds, it could slow them down and just make it big enough and hit a bunch at once, and it'll just stun them at least, kind of like the taser. Utilize those to try to stun them for a quick second. We saw the silver grenades again within the flashback for Satrakian, so maybe utilize that and stun them for a quick second and just start sending them all on fire or something crazy like that. But I thought it was really cool. I like that idea. Of course, like I said, they made it seem like it's not going to work at all, but I feel like it's microwaves. There's not much you can do to change the waves that you create, so I don't really know where they could take it, but who knows? There might be something to it, something that they might actually figure out. Maybe my theory is right, and the only reason it's working is because the strigoi as individuals regress to a more human-like state, and they utilize the skills that the human had. But I like what they did. I liked all the different little things that we got to see. I love the flashback. I always love seeing Satrakian, like I mentioned, but this is a really good one. We got to see, oddly enough, we actually saw a character from, I would assume it was last season. I don't think he was introduced in the first season, but if I remember right, this is the guy that Ichorus went to, and I'm trying to remember how it played out, but I remember that he found him and stuff, and it's like, hey, I want you to join something that's even greater than when we were, Nazis. And it was that same guy. He used to own like a shop and stuff, and he comes back, and I was like, oh, I recognize him, and of course, so does Satrakian. I would assume it was like years later and stuff, but I like the way all that played out, and he actually traps him and stuff like that. And it was really cool. I really enjoyed that whole scene. And they talk about, with it being madness, they talk about how hunters, historically have always been loners. Like, they do just the craziest stuff. Like, the first one they mentioned, like, this dude set fire to an entire ship full of people just based on the rumor that a strigoi was on board. And people just go nuts. It was like, all right. And, kind of the pattern is that they kind of would walk alone, and that was their whole thing. And they go back to, we get to see Satrakian during, obviously, all of his time alone, and we get to see one moment where he did almost go mad. Like, it was like, this is, one of his breaking points. Like, I'm just so tired of these freaking things, and all these, he's in Amsterdam, so, of course, all these random guys going to all these prostitutes, they get sent to this guy, and they just get killed off. And Satrakian's just like, you know what? He lost it. Like, he chopped this dude up, and he wraps up the face and everything so he can't really do anything, and just keeps him in a trunk, and then dumps the trunk in like in the ocean. And it was insane. I was like, wow, that's really far to go. And he says like, sunlight is too good for you. And he went hardcore with it. And I like that. It showed, like that actual madness. And I kind of like seeing that for characters where we see how far they went at one point, and that's why that was when they knew, like, this is crazy. I can't do this every time. Like, that's not only time consuming for the very important mission that he has, but it's also very risky. You never know what could happen if you're spending all this time in one location. Who knows who else could show up? You know, what other strigoi could come in to try to take you down. But I love what we got to see from that flashback and him talking with Quinlan and them really teaming up in this episode. Like, he actually helps, you know, confide in Quinlan a little bit, and you know, they talk about he tells him his story and everything, and that's how they discover that there seems like there's so much more inside the lumen, and you know, all this other stuff is like, you know, no strigoi could ever, you know, read from a silver lined book, and it's like, well, here you are though, and we find out that it's sunlight, and it makes perfect sense. Like, I never even considered that myself. I was like, yeah, that actually makes a ton of sense. Just make it in sunlight, and that's how you read the secret lettering. And so we now know the silver in the lead box is how they can do it. They just have to find the crimson worm, which probably won't happen until they find the new body for the master. They probably will have to go through that whole process again, which I would assume would take a while, and maybe they could do it temporarily. Maybe they might take out Ichorus. I don't know if he has a specific worm, or you know, how his thing operates. He's just kind of given, you know, his own little thing. So I don't know if they shoot him, if he just instantly dies, but he's got the whole super speed going on. So it kind of makes it a bit more difficult. But I like what we got to see in this. And then they're going after the master to find out who is going to be taken over, what the new body is going to look like. And so they do actually end up going to Palmer, and Satraki and Palmer end up making this deal by the end of this episode. And I'm excited to see where this goes. I don't know if Palmer's really going to make it out of this whole situation, because of course he's still kind of in the doghouse a little bit. Didn't even know, of course, that the master had been decapitated and isn't even in the same body anymore. So, you know, he knows he still has his usefulness. Otherwise, like he said, he would have been dead already. But the one thing I thought of was, like, how is he going to play this off? Like, what is his plan for using the white? And then, so, I mean, in this episode, he, like, stands up and falls over, and by the end of the episode, he's in a wheelchair and everything. How is he going to play this off when Ichorus comes in? Or this new guy, who I feel like is kind of meant to be Palmer's replacement, because it's like, oh, he certainly seemed human to me. And it's just like, oh, he seems like, you know, this young businessman who's coming in to take over for the older businessman. And that's kind of how their system is kind of operating right now. It's like, all right, well, we have this new person we trust 100%, and we'll do some stuff and manipulate some things here, sign this and sign that, and eventually all of Palmer's assets will transfer over to this younger guy. And it's like, well, we know we can trust him. And then that way they can just either let Palmer go or just, you know, actually kill him off themselves. But I don't know how he plans on playing it off once he does get the formula. I mean, they shook hands in this. I don't know if he is going to actually have the formula by the next episode or what. But I'm excited to see where it goes for sure. I don't know if he'll make it. I want him to. I actually like his character. I feel like he has one of the more interesting stories throughout the series, just because he's in this weird position where he's working with them, and then, you know, the last season where he wanted to work against them, and he lost the woman he loved, and, you know, her freaking heart got, you know, ripped out of her chest. So he's gone through some craziness, and I really enjoy watching his story and seeing where's he gonna end up going next. Like, what side is he gonna be on, and who's gonna, you know, how is, you know, each side gonna convince him to join them. So I don't know what they're going to do with him. I don't know how long this guy's going to make it, but I'm curious to see how he plays off suddenly being super rejuvenated. I mean, I'm sure he'll just lie and be like, yeah, modern medicine, I was passing out and everything, but I'm totally fine now because of modern medicine. So maybe that's what we'll try to do, and it'll half work. I'm sure Ichorus will, he might not know exactly what to do. It's like, well, the master isn't here yet, so I have to let him live. I can't just, you know, like, chop his head off right here, because I know he's up to something, like somehow he's better. But who knows? It might take a little minute, and plus they might be a little busy in the next episode to deal with some of the minor details, like how is he rejuvenated if they're doing this entire battle with Central Park, and, you know, there's still some other stuff going on as well. But I'm super excited for this next episode. I really enjoyed this one. Like I said, I think it is my favorite this season so far. But of course, definitely want to know what you guys thought about it. So please comment below. Let me know your favorite parts, your least favorite parts, and there are a lot of different things going, you know, into this next episode, but I really want to know how you guys think the battle at Central Park is really going to play out, because there's so much stuff going into it They're, Justine is basically saying we use everyone we got. Who knows what they're going to be doing. Like, there were some clips of, like, Gus and Angel, and they actually had guns this time, so I'm not 100% sure if that was them on, like, the police squad thing, or if they took all those people that were arrested and stuff like that, and they're going to use them as a part of, like, this small army, which makes the most sense, because they're already using them to, go into tunnels and crap, so why not just transfer them over to, like, the grand battle? But there's so many different elements, and then of course we still have Eph and Dutch, and maybe they'll give up on the microwave transmitter, but who knows? Like, there's so many different elements as to how this can go, and them still having to find the Crimson Worm and all the stuff with Palmer as well. But want to know how you guys think it'll play out. I don't think it'll end it, of course. I don't think it's going to be like this grand victory. It's like, great, we won. They might take out all those things in that nest. It's totally possible. It's not even possible for them to take out all of them. But they might take out a bunch, and they might actually win that battle, but it's still like just one grand nest, and all it is taking, stopping them from going into like the safe zones at night. But like I said, I want to know how you guys think it'll play out, and of course, like I said, I want to know what you guys thought about this episode in general, so please comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.